My sister stole my fiancé just 3 days before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. They thought I would crumble, that I'd cancel everything and hide in shame. They had no idea I was about to turn my wedding into their worst nightmare. They wanted my fiancé, my money, and my future?
Fine.
I decided to give them the wedding they deserved, complete with a gift they, and the entire internet, would never, ever forget. I should have seen the catastrophe barreling towards me, a freight train painted in my sister's signature shade of saccharine pink. Maya had always been the sun, and I, her long-suffering moon, existed only to reflect her light. She was the golden child, the one whose laughter was music and whose tears could launch 1,000 parental rescue missions. She was prettier, with effortless blonde waves to my mousy brown, smarter, with a quick wit that always left me stumbling for a retort, and more charming, with a magnetic pull that drew people into her orbit like moths to a destructive flame. Growing up in her shadow was a masterclass in learning to live with less. My favorite sweater would disappear from my closet only to reappear on her in an Instagram post, captioned, "Borrowing from the sis." My carefully cultivated group of friends would slowly drift towards her gravitational pull, captivated by her stories and her drama. And then, inevitably, there were the boyfriends. It was a pattern, a cruel and predictable cycle. At 16, I spent months gathering the courage to talk to Tommy Martinez, the quiet, brooding captain of the soccer team. We had one perfect conversation by the lockers, and he agreed to take me to prom. A week before the dance, Maya swooped in. With a few well-placed, venomous lies whispered in his ear, that I was still hung up on someone else, that I thought he was boring, she convinced him I was playing games. He took her to prom instead. I watched them from the bleachers, my own prom dress hanging uselessly in my closet, as they were crowned king and queen. At 22, the betrayal was more sophisticated, but no less devastating. I was spending a semester abroad in Florence, Italy, immersing myself in art and history, while my college boyfriend, David, stayed behind. When his father passed away suddenly, I was racked with guilt for being so far away. "Don't worry," Maya had said over a crackling international call, her voice dripping with false empathy. "I'll look after him. I'll make sure he's okay." Looking after him, it turned out, meant moving into his apartment, sleeping in his bed, and systematically erasing me from his life. She claimed she was just helping him through his grief, a selfless act of sisterly support. I came home to find my belongings boxed up and a new narrative firmly in place. I was the selfish girlfriend who had abandoned him in his time of need. Each time, the fallout was the same. I would be shattered, and my parents would rush in, not to comfort me, but to manage Maya's collateral damage. "Oh, honey, Maya doesn't mean to hurt you," my mother would coo, stroking my hair as if I were a hysterical child. "She just has this incredible energy. People are naturally drawn to her." My father, ever the pragmatist, would chime in, "Your sister's not malicious, Claire. She's just impulsive. She lives in the moment and doesn't always think through the consequences." But they were wrong. Maya was a master strategist, a Machiavellian princess ruling her own tiny kingdom. I knew this because, at 15, I stumbled upon her diary, a pink leather-bound book filled not with teenage angst, but with cold, calculated battle plans. It was a detailed ledger of my life, with her annotations on how to acquire every part of it she coveted. Her entry on Tommy Martinez read, "Claire is so painfully dull. Tommy looks bored whenever she's around. I bet I could have him wrapped around my finger in one conversation. He deserves someone exciting." On David. "He's way too good for Claire. She doesn't challenge him. I'm going to show him what a real partner looks like." Reading those words was like having the curtain pulled back on my entire life, revealing the ugly, grinding machinery that had been working against me all along. But I truly naively believed that Jake Patterson was different. He was supposed to be my exception, my happily ever after. We had been a team for 4 solid years, engaged for the last 8 months of them. Our story wasn't a whirlwind romance, it was a slow burn, built in the trenches of real life. We met in the chaotic, greasy heart of a downtown restaurant. I was a waitress, running on caffeine and fumes, trying to pay my way through nursing school. He was a line cook, a culinary artist with ambitions that far outstripped his meager paycheck. "He fell in love with me," he said, during a disastrous Saturday night service. A critical sauce had burned, the head chef was screaming, and I had simply grabbed a spatula and started helping him scrape the blackened mess from the bottom of the pan, cracking jokes until he was laughing through his stress. I, in turn, fell for his passion. I loved watching him practice new recipes at 2 in the morning, his face a study in intense concentration. I loved his dreams of one day opening his own restaurant, a cozy, unpretentious place he wanted to call Patterson's Place. I believed in that dream so much that I emptied my entire savings account, $23,000, scraped together from years of 60-hour work weeks, skipped lunches, and holiday shifts, and handed it to him. It was the seed money for his business plan, a tangible piece of my faith in him, when the bank saw him as just another failed college student. Jake had seen Maya in action. He wasn't blind to her manipulations. He'd witnessed her shameless flirting with my ex-boyfriends at family dinners, her saccharine compliments that were always laced with a subtle poison. He had rolled his eyes when, during wedding dress shopping, Maya had looked at my simple, elegant choice and said, "Oh, Claire, it's so practical. But don't you want something that will really get Jake's blood pumping on the big day?" He had been the one to comfort me after she'd accidentally spilled a glass of red wine all over our framed engagement photo at Christmas, claiming the lighting was unflattering anyway and offering to have her photographer friend do a reshoot. "Your sister is a walking tornado of drama," he'd muttered that night as we drove home. "I honestly don't know how you've survived her this long." And yet, like a fool, I defended her. "She means well," I'd said, parroting my parents' tired script. "She just doesn't have a filter." The rehearsal dinner was the picture of perfection, the calm before the storm. We held it in the private dining room of Bella Vista, the very restaurant where Jake and I had our first date, a full-circle moment that felt like fate. The room was alive with the warm glow of candlelight and the buzz of happy conversation. 50 of our nearest and dearest were there, raising champagne glasses and sharing stories. Jake's hand was a warm, steady presence on mine under the table as my father delivered a heartfelt speech. He spoke of the joy of watching his daughter find her person, of welcoming Jake into the family, of seeing a struggling line cook blossom into a man worthy of my love. Across the table, Maya sat, a vision in the sapphire blue bridesmaid dress I had paid $400 for. Her smile was radiant, her eyes glistening with what I mistook for tears of joy. She had strategically seated herself directly opposite Jake, ostensibly for better photos. Throughout the meal, she was a masterclass in subtle seduction. She leaned in close whenever he spoke, her laughter at his jokes was just a decibel too loud, her hand would find a reason to brush his arm as she made a point about the wedding arrangements. "She's just excited for us," Jake had whispered to me when he caught me watching them. "You know how dramatic she is." When it was her turn for the maid of honor speech, Maya stood, clutching the microphone, her performance worthy of an Oscar. "Clara's always been more than a sister to me," she began, her voice thick with emotion. "She has been my guide, my role model. She taught me the meaning of loyalty, of standing by the people you love, no matter what." She turned her gaze to Jake. And when Jake came into her life, I saw a light in my sister I'd never seen before. He made her complete. Her eyes met mine across the table. "Jake, you are getting a woman who will be your fiercest champion. And Claire, you are getting a man who finally sees you for the incredible person you are." She raised her glass, her hand trembling. "To Claire and Jake, may you always, always choose each other first." The room exploded into applause. Jake leaned over and kissed my cheek. "See," he whispered, "your sister really loves you." In that moment, I was consumed by a wave of guilt, ashamed that I had ever harbored a single suspicious thought about her. 2 nights later, the night before my wedding, sleep was a cruel impossibility. My mind was a frantic carousel of last-minute details. My dress, a vintage A-line gown my grandmother had worn in 1952, was hanging in my closet, its hand-sewn pearls seeming to glow in the moonlight. I had confirmed the guest count, 147 souls. I had mentally double-checked that the rings were secure with Jake's best man. My phone was a minefield of alarms, set to remind me to hydrate, to eat, to breathe. At 5 in the morning, I gave up the fight. I decided to surprise Jake with coffee and bagels at his apartment, a final, quiet moment together before the beautiful chaos of our wedding day. His apartment was a cozy one-bedroom above Mrs. Chen's flower shop, a place that felt as much like home to me as my own. I let myself in with a key he had given me a week after we started dating, the familiar click of the lock a comforting sound. The coffee and bagels I was holding crashed to the floor. There, in the bed we had shared hundreds of times, was my sister and my fiancé. She was wearing the white silk lingerie I had painstakingly chosen for my honeymoon, a $300 confection of lace that was now tangled around her ankles. My engagement ring, the one he had worked double shifts for 8 months to afford, was sitting on the nightstand, gleaming next to two empty champagne flutes and the greasy remnants of takeout from Russo's, our special anniversary spot. Maya saw me first, and in her eyes I saw no shame, no shock, no remorse. I saw only the cold, hard glint of triumph. This was not a mistake. This was a victory lap. "We were going to tell you," she said, her voice utterly devoid of emotion as she sat up, making no move to cover herself. Jake finally realized he chose the wrong sister. Jake, meanwhile, was a pathetic whirlwind of panic, scrambling for his boxers, stammering a garbled mess of apologies. He loved me, it just happened, he was confused. His face was a blotchy mess of shame and terror. "Claire, this isn't what it looks like," he managed to choke out, the most pathetic and cliché lie in the history of infidelity. But Maya, ever the director of this cruel play, cut him off with a laugh that was pure ice. It was the same laugh she'd used when she framed me for breaking our mother's antique vase when we were 12. It was the sound of her winning. "Oh, stop pretending you're sorry, Jake," she purred, her eyes locked on mine. "We've been doing this for months. Why don't you tell her about our little trip to Vegas? The one you took for that restaurant conference? Tell her about Christmas, when you whispered my name in your sleep. Tell her how you told me last week that your only regret was that you didn't meet me first." My world tilted on its axis. The Vegas conference had been 7 months ago. At Christmas, Maya had stayed in the guest room right next to ours. Last week, Jake had been distant and moody, blaming it on work stress. And what about the loan, Jake? Maya continued, her voice gaining strength, savoring every word. "Tell her how you were planning to use her $23,000 to open a restaurant with me." The room began to spin. My money. The money I had earned through exhaustion and sacrifice, the money that represented our shared dream, was just a prize for them to steal. "Tell her about the apartment we looked at in Portland," she pressed on, relentless. "The one with the garden view. Tell her our plan was to take her money and disappear right after the wedding." Every lie, every late night at the restaurant, every canceled sister date, it all clicked into place with sickening clarity. They had been planning this for months, orchestrating my public humiliation down to the last detail. I finally understood why they had insisted on hiring their own photographer, their friend Chelsea. They wanted to capture every agonizing moment of my heartbreak. I turned and walked out, their voices a meaningless drone behind me. Jake was begging. Maya was commanding. As I reached my car, Jake's desperate face appeared in his apartment window. "Claire, please. Let me explain." I put the car in drive and pulled away, watching him in my rearview mirror, a half-naked fool realizing far too late that the game was up. I drove for hours, ending up at Sunset Beach, the place where Jake had proposed. The memory of that perfect evening was now a cruel joke. He had kneeled in the sand, his voice shaking as he promised me a lifetime of love and partnership. "You make me a better man, Claire," he had said. "I can't imagine my life without you." I sat there for 6 hours, the waves crashing against the shore, a symphony for my shattered heart. I should have been crying, screaming, falling apart. But the grief was quickly being replaced by something else, something cold, hard, and calculating. Maya had been stealing from me my entire life, and I had always forgiven her. But this was different. This wasn't a stolen sweater. This was a calculated assassination of my future, my finances, and my spirit. And this time, there would be no forgiveness. This time, there would be a reckoning. When I finally walked into my parents' house, it was a scene of controlled chaos. My mother was on the phone, her voice choked with tears as she tried to cancel the florist. My father, who looked as if he had aged a decade overnight, was arguing with the caterer about their cancellation policy. "Sweetheart," my mother cried when she saw me, her mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. Jake called. He said there was some confusion with Maya. He said it's just pre-wedding jitters, that you two can work this out. Even now, their instinct was to smooth things over, to protect Maya, to urge me towards understanding and forgiveness. "There's no confusion," I said, my voice eerily calm. I set my purse on the counter. "And the wedding is still on. It's happening tomorrow. Just not in the way anyone expects." My parents exchanged a look of alarm. "Honey, you're in shock," my father said gently. "Let's just sit down." "I am not in shock," I interrupted, my voice like steel. "For the first time in my life, I am thinking with perfect clarity. The wedding is on. I then locked myself in my childhood bedroom and began to dismantle my old life and build the stage for my revenge. My first call was to my cousin, Derek. 3 years my senior, Derek was a tech security genius who worked for a high-end firm protecting celebrities from the dark side of the internet. More importantly, he had always been immune to Maya's charms. He was the only one who had ever called her out on her lies. I had helped him through a brutal divorce a few years prior, using my nursing research skills to help him document his ex-wife's infidelity and attempts to hide assets. He owed me a favor, and I was calling it in. "Name it," he said, the moment I finished explaining the situation. His disgust was palpable through the phone. "What do you need?" "I need everything, Derek," I said. "I need proof. I need it documented, legally, in a way that is irrefutable." "Consider it done," he replied. "Give me Jake's address. I can have micro cameras installed within 2 hours. I'll pose as a cable guy. His building security is a joke." My next call was to Chelsea Morrison, the photographer Maya had handpicked to document my demise. "There's been a slight change of plans for tomorrow," I told her, my voice bright and cheerful. "I have a very specific shot list, and it's a bit unconventional." I could almost hear her lean forward in interest. "Maya mentioned you were into authentic storytelling," she said. "I'm all in. Should I bring extra memory cards?" Maya had been briefing her, preparing her to capture the drama. "Perfect. Bring everything you have," I said. "And be prepared for a live stream." My final, and most crucial, call was to Jake's mother, Patricia. She had always despised Maya, referring to her as that manipulative little peacock. I laid out the entire sordid story. The silence on the other end of the line was thick with a mother's fury. "That sinful, worthless boy," she finally whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "After everything you have done for him." "Mrs. Patterson," I said, "I have a plan, but I need your help." I explained my idea, every last detail. When I was finished, she asked only one question. "Are you sure this is legal?" "Derek is handling the details," I assured her. "All I need from you is to make sure Jake is at that altar tomorrow." "Oh, he'll be there," she said, her voice grim and determined. "That boy is going to face the music if it's the last thing I do." The morning of my wedding dawned bright and clear. I woke up feeling a strange sense of peace. My phone was already a hive of activity. At 6:15, a text from Maya came through. "I'm so sorry, sis. I never meant for this to happen. Can we please talk?" The audacity was breathtaking. I texted back, "Of course. See you at the church. We'll have lots of time to talk then." At 3 a.m., Derek had sent me a message. "Package delivered. You're going to love the bonus footage." I arrived at the church in my wedding dress, a serene and smiling bride. Maya was waiting in the bridal suite, a bundle of nerves. When I walked in, I smiled warmly. "No explanation needed," I said, gently adjusting a stray piece of her hair. "You want Jake? He's yours." The relief that flooded her face was sickening. She thought she had won, that I was going to step aside gracefully. "I've just made one tiny change to the ceremony," I said casually. "Since you two are so deeply in love, I thought you should be the one to marry him. Today. Right now." The color drained from her face. She was trapped. Refusing would expose her as the homewrecker she was. 20 minutes later, Maya was walking down the aisle in a borrowed dress, her smile as brittle as spun sugar. Jake stood at the altar, his face the color of ash, his eyes pleading with me as I sat in the front row, smiling serenely. The ceremony was a surreal spectacle. When the pastor asked if anyone objected, a palpable silence fell over the 200 guests. I simply gave an encouraging nod for him to proceed. They said their I do's, their voices barely whispers. Their kiss was a brief, awkward press of lips. During the reception, I played the part of the magnanimous, heartbroken sister to perfection. I mingled, I smiled, I explained that love works in mysterious ways. And then, just before the cake cutting, I stood up, tapped my champagne glass, and announced my wedding gift. The lights dimmed, a large screen descended, and the show began. Derek had done his job flawlessly. The video opened on Jake and Maya, in bed, 3 months prior. The hidden cameras had captured everything. The guests watched in horrified silence as my sister and my ex-fiancé laughed about how gullible I was. They watched them plot to steal my savings, to move to Portland, to leave me with nothing. They heard Maya, on the phone just a week before, calling me pathetic and spineless. When the video ended, I took the microphone. Surprise, I said, my voice ringing through the silent room. I thought everyone should know the real love story we're celebrating today. Chaos erupted, but I wasn't done. With a nod from me, Derek sent a mass text to every phone in the room, a link to a website containing the full, unedited video, plus months of their incriminating text messages. The hashtag is hashtag sisterly love, I added helpfully. Maya looked at her phone and let out a blood-curdling scream. The video was already going viral. You're insane, Jake finally yelled, his face purple with rage. We can get this annulled. Actually, I said, pulling a folder of legal documents from my purse. You can't. Congratulations. You're stuck with each other. This is revenge porn, Maya shrieked. I'll sue you. At that, Derek stood up. Everything was filmed legally, he announced calmly. Jake's lease allows for security cameras, and he signed the consent forms months ago. As for the wedding, it was a public event that you both consented to have filmed. Everything is perfectly admissible. They fled then, a disgraced bride and groom, their screams echoing from the parking lot as they blamed each other for their spectacular downfall. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Jake's restaurant investors pulled their funding. Maya was fired from her job at a conservative law firm for moral turpitude. The video became an internet sensation, a cautionary tale of greed and betrayal. 3 months later, Maya texted me, begging for help, saying Jake was a nightmare and she wanted a divorce. I screenshotted her plea and posted it online with a caption, "Some people never learn." A year later, they were still married, trapped in a prison of their own making, unable to afford lawyers, and too infamous to start over. They drifted from state to state, but their digital shame always followed them. As for me, I used that year to heal. The money I had saved for Jake's dream became the seed money for my own. I started a successful nursing consulting business. And I fell in love. Derek, my brilliant, loyal cousin, had seen me at my worst and had helped me fight my way back to the light. Our partnership, forged in the fires of revenge, had blossomed into a real, honest love. When he proposed, he told me, "Watching you take control of your life like that, it was the sexiest thing I'd ever seen." Our wedding is next spring. Maya and Jake are not invited, but Mrs. Patterson will be walking me down the aisle. All the vendors from the first wedding are providing their services for free, eager to be part of a real celebration. This time, there will be no secrets, no lies, only the sweet, sweet taste of a happy ending that I wrote myself.